Why are there so many shows starring Muppets and dozens of movies too? They said they'd watch everyone and they mean it. It's something that they've got to do. So now they've pledged you a lifelong commitment. The Muppets, Matthew and Sam.
Welcome to Commitment, the podcast where two friends have vowed to watch all things Muppets. I'm Matthew Gatos.
And hey, I'm Sam Schultz.
Ooh, cool guy energy coming into the room today.
I got my booster shot the other day. I'm doing this through more of a fog than I usually am.
I also was up till 2:30 in the morning watching F1, so
You're in for a hell of a podcast,
this will be
everybody.
quite the energy. But this week we are here to discuss the 1981 documentary of Muppets and Men, as well as probably a little discussion about the book of the same name.
Guess who read the whole book? Me. Longest book I've read in a long time, and I read it all yesterday.
I have also read the book, but I made the mistake of not reading it that recently. And so Sam will actually be the one informing me about the book. I do want to point out that you just said, no, I won't make fun of you. I was going to make fun of you a little bit because the book is like 150 pages long, but I won't.
175.
Okay.
And but, okay, here's the thing. So, a lot of it's pictures. By the same note, though, the pages are very big and the print is very small. So
right.
It's kind of like you're reading a full-size book. And also, what the fuck, man? You're supposed to say, good job. Here's a stamp you can put in your little book so you can get a Pizza Hut pizza.
Here's a good scratch and sniff sticker that smells like bubble gum.
Yeah. How did they track the book thing? Do you remember?
I think it was an honesty policy. I think like you and your parents were supposed to sort of initial or sign off
That
stuff.
sounds right.
So your parents had to keep track of how much you read over the summer break or whatever like that.
So if your parents are liars, it's fat times for you in regards to getting free Pizza Hut pizzas.
Yeah, that feels like a good way to mess up your kids pretty early, is to like set them off on a life of crime of like, okay, don't tell anyone, but I'm going to lie about how many books you read so you can get free pizza.
But what if you frame it as like Pizza Hut pizza? They're the fat cats here. They have infinite free pizza. They could provide free pizza to everyone on Earth if they wanted to, but they're hoarding all of it. So as a way to get back at the man and the flawed education system that didn't teach you that you should read for the joy of it, but just for pizza, we're going to pull a little scam here, kid.
But see, I think the potentially more productive version of this is convincing your kid to read as much as possible to get as much free pizza as possible. So you're still like, damn the man, but you're doing it through having your kid read more to be like, hey, we're going to get those fat cats pizza money, but you got to read some books.
Like the Communist Manifesto and like the Anarchist Cookbook and stuff.
I mean, I don't know what the limits are on the Book It program.
Yeah, that's true. What if your kid comes in and it's like, I read Lolita. Would you be sent to jail?
I mean,
is that how they're monitoring parents?
The Book It program?
Books in different states.
The Book It program is still going.
Exists. I looked it up the other day, actually.
Yeah, students can still earn a Pizza Hut personal pan pizza for reading each month.
The website really hides the pizza angle. There's like a picture of an apple on the website.
Well, thankfully on their Instagram, they're still hyping it up.
Oh, good. Okay.
But I think we missed out. The enrollment time was October 1st, apparently, I think, for
oh, shit.
Yeah, we just missed it.
October 1st?
Yeah.
Maybe you can write him an email for me and say, hey, look.
Hey, my kid Sam.
My co-podcaster, he read a book. He needs this.
He wants pizza.
Yeah, he's got to read 200 comic strips pretty soon as well, so...
Does
each of those count? Does the whole thing collectively count?
Is this 200 free pizzas, please? Oh, I also, real quick, need to offer my own correction for a thing I said on this podcast previously.
Ooh.
Yeah. I somehow messed up the name of at Starman's Art on Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
I called him Michael Gomez, and his name is Richard Gomez. And
Right.
I can
Is
tell
his
you.
name Richard Michael Gomez?
Yes. And so that's where
Okay.
what happened was while we're recording, I wanted to shout him out. And so I went to his Twitter account to get his username correct. And then I saw his bio says Richard Michael Gomez, and my brain said, 2 of those words is all that's going to fit in your brain. And so I completely forgot his actual first name. So Richard Gomez is at Starman's Art, who does amazing illustrations and really cool puppets.
And he went to that event that we were jealous of.
Yes.
Speaking of things that I'm potentially jealous of,
Okay.
you had a bit of fan art, maybe. It was fan art of our own show, basically. Go pretty viral on old Twitter, Matt.
Are you talking about the beloved Gonzi,
I'm talking about Gonzi. God bless him.
hero of the internet, loved by
Yeah.
all? In a recent episode, I misspoke. Instead of saying Gonzo, I said Gonzi because I was trying to talk about Gonzo and Fozzie, and that led to us discussing a beautiful hybrid creature of Gonzo and Fozzie, which I then went into Photoshop and created, shared with the internet, and most people were disgusted.
Ew. I just saw Fonzo for the first time. I think he's worse.
Fonzo is definitely worse.
Fonzo looks mean. Fonzo looks like he'd cut you.
So yeah, what happened here was created Gonzi, who's kind of cute. He's got the Fozzie body with the Gonzo features. He's blue, and I like him. I think he's quite cute. But then Emily Engel, who is BX Personified on Twitter, who's the person who makes all of the like stuffed Muppet replicas that you've probably seen, replied and said, "Well, now you have no choice but to make a Fonzo." And in my head, I was like, "Well, that's not going to look good." I can picture it, and I did not, to be fair, spend as much time on Fonzo as I did on Gonzi. But I basically just squeezed Fozzie's features into the head size of Gonzo, and I don't like him. He's bad.
He looks like he'd scamper around your house in the dark.
It looks like maybe like Fozzie's Robin. Like this is Fozzie's little annoying nephew.
His little nasty little nephew.
Yeah.
But so the reason I'm potentially jealous is because you even got a reply from Muppets Mayhem guy.
Yeah, Jeff Yorks, who is one of the co-creators of the TV show, The Muppets Mayhem, which, as we're speaking, they're having a New York Comic-Con panel showing off some footage, replied to Gonzi saying, "What I like about him is nothing." Which is kind of the sentiment I got from most people. we got some Monsters Inc. put that thing back where it came from, or so help me gifts. Lots of people just being like, "Can I unmeet him? I would like to not meet this Gonzi." And what I really have to say to these people is, if this is the way you react to my creations, I'm just gonna make more of them. You have added fuel to the fire, and I can promise you by the time this podcast comes out, you will have at least seen one more of my unholy creations. I have sent Sam about 4 or 5 different Muppet mashups.
Send me some really good ones.
Yeah, they're
I'm a little worried about you, frankly.
It has become a bit of an obsession. When I texted you the pictures, I even said I have a problem because I can't stop thinking of Muppets to mash up. And when I start thinking of it, I then have to immediately create it. And
I think you sent me those when I was like at the height of my like feeling horrible from getting my shots as well, my flu shot and my thing. So I was just like, I can't do this right now. I'm sorry.
You just had a fever dream happening.
Yeah.
You're just like, I think I just saw a Kermit Rolf mashup. What's happening?
But by the same note, if people had seen Kermit and Fozzie's dad out of context, they would have said the same thing about that, you know? He's a nasty, horrible monstrosity, too.
Yeah, or you got like the Kermit the Pig from the Muppet Show. And I think this is in that same vein where my goal with these terrible creations is to make something in that like Muppet Uncanny Valley that looks like it could almost exist, but you know it's still wrong.
End of the day, I know how this is all going to end. I know how this is all going to end, Matt, this podcast. You're going to get a job working with Muppets somehow. I'm going to be left in the cold, and I swear, I vow it right here. If you get a job with the Muppets, I'm not doing this podcast with you anymore. If you don't bring me with you,
Wow.
if you don't find a way to bring me with you, we're done. I'll never speak to you again.
I feel like we'd have to be a package deal. If somebody reached out to us because of this podcast and said, hey, would you like to work with the Muppets?
We've both had good ideas on this podcast, okay?
That's what I'm saying. I don't think they're going to reach out and go like, hey, we'd love to work with Kermitman on something, but only half of Kermitman.
Look, I work on a podcast with a much more famous person than myself. Otherwise than this one, it happens all the time.
Well, I think that's a little bit of a different case.
Shouldn't be.
I don't have that Hank Green energy. I haven't written multiple books or been famous on the internet for 15 years. So
if you were Hank making this podcast, you would just be like, he'd be like answering emails the whole time while you're doing it. And like,
wow, drag him.
He knows it's true.
One last thing before we get into talking about Muppets and Men this week, we want to let you know that next week we'll be taking a week off because Sam and I are both doing some traveling. So, yeah, we're not going to have an episode next week, but you won't have to miss us for long because we'll be back the week after that with a brand new episode discussing The Great Muppet Caper. All right, well, let's get into it, Sam. What did we watch and read this week?
In the TV version of Muppets and Men, you'll take a look behind the scenes, or under the scenes, as the case may be, at the final months of production of The Muppet Show. You'll thrill to Jim and Frank taking meetings, laugh along with the Muppet performers as they gargle water to try and sound like fish, and take a look, step by step, at all of the hard work poured into the In the Navy Viking skit in a segment that made me feel terrible about every bad thing that I ever said about The Muppet Show. The book of Muppets and Men covers sort of the same territory, but much more in-depth, first introducing you to the key people involved in the show, from Jim Henson to David Laser to little Stevie Whitmire, then walking you through the writing, set design, puppet building, music making, and rehearsal that goes into every show, before ultimately walking you day by day through a week on The Muppet Show, specifically a week where they're shooting with Linda Ronstadt and finishing up the non-Paul Simon parts of the Paul Simon episode. That was a very rough, overview. It's like a documentary, so it's kind of hard to, really say what this is about, but it's basically, the book, great, very in-depth, and then I kind of felt like the TV thing was kind of more like a companion piece to the book, almost, of just seeing, in motion what they were talking about in the book.
Yeah, I agree. It was, I think this discussion will probably be much the same in that, it's hard to go through this exactly, so we're not going to go as scene by scene like we do with the Muppet Show. We'll probably just talk about our general feelings on it and different parts that we liked and didn't like, maybe. But the book is much more thorough, I will say, and it definitely feels like a companion piece. And obviously, it's a lot harder for people to track down the book than it is to track down the documentary. So
They gotta reprint this book. This book's great.
Yeah, it's interesting that it has been out of print for so long, and I think it's just... it's a bummer that it's, over $100 if you try to find a used copy of that online somewhere in decent condition. But if you have the means or you have a friend who has it that will loan it out to you, definitely get your hands on it and give it a read because it is much more thorough than the documentary. One of my main issues up top with the documentary is that just as it's about to get a deep dive, interesting tidbit, they're cut to a clip, every few minutes. Jim Henson will be talking about something interesting, and just as he says the most interesting part of it, they cut to a 2-minute montage of clips from the Muppet Show, and I'm like, wait, I want to hear more about that though.
There are a lot of clips from the Muppet Show in this thing. I was skimming through it this morning, and I was like, oh yeah, I don't remember it super well because a lot of it is just clips from the Muppet Show.
Yeah, it was the second time I watched through this, I was able to get it done a lot faster because I just would fast forward through any of the montages of Muppet Show clips.
The beginning of the documentary is very cool because it shows you the I Get Around motorcycle skit, and then literally the camera pans back until you can see the people under the table doing their thing. I kind of wish it had just been almost like Planet Earth, like no words, just go back and you see what they're doing under the thing. And they do that a couple other times, but it's very effective at the beginning and very worth watching just to be oh, there's like 30 people down there.
Yeah, and they do that a couple times, and I wish they would do it more often, and I wish they would show some more of those moments, because I do think the two high points for me are the beginning of the I Get Around section, and then the more extended In the Navy segment, where they are talking about everything that goes into this.
That part's great.
And they do that a few times throughout. Like they show the Gophers Are Smarter number, and they do the same thing at the end of that, where they pan out. And I'm curious of how they were filming this, or what the plan was of was that a second take that they filmed? Because there's times where this camera is clearly in the shot if they were filming this for the show. So I don't think this is the same take that was used in the episode.
Right, it's probably a rehearsal take or something. And since the music is pre-taped, then I guess it makes sense it would sound the same.
Yeah. But yeah, but yeah, as far as chronological order of this documentary goes, I could not track down an actual air date for this documentary because it was syndicated in 1981.
Right.
So we're talking about it now, right after we finished The Muppet Show, because that felt like it made the most sense. But as far as when people in 1981 would have seen this, I don't actually know.
Yeah, it seems like it would have been on PBS or something like that, but that doesn't seem to be the case. It feels like maybe if it wasn't on PBS, it was on at 1 o'clock in the morning or something, Just weird stuff comes on at 1 o'clock in the morning.
But yeah, as Sam said, this was produced during the 5th season of The Muppet Show, so pretty much everything you see here, aside from maybe a couple clips of the show itself, all the behind-the-scenes stuff is from the 5th season of The Muppet Show. And this was released in somewhat official ways that you could like track it down, which is why I think it ended up on YouTube in pretty okay quality.
Right.
There was a VHS copy that was released for educational purposes in 1988. So I guess you could be in school and have a day where they push in the TV cart and they're like, hey, we're watching a Muppets and Men today.
We're watching how they made the Muppet Show, I guess.
Yeah.
I just grabbed whatever was on the shelf. I don't know.
Here, learn something from this.
What's the Muppet Show? We're in 5th grade. It's been off the air since we were alive.
But it was also included on the Very Best of the Muppet Show Volume 1 DVD, which is a DVD that was only available in the UK. And it was a bonus feature on that DVD. So
that seems like what this rip must be to me, because the credits stop so abruptly and it shows like a pretty modern Jim Henson television logo at the end.
Yeah, so I have to assume it's probably from that DVD as well, because it's in pretty good quality, and the credits at the end definitely more modern than when this would have come out.
I think what this the whole time I was watching and reading the book, I enjoyed this documentary. I think that the Muppets were more fun to me back in the day when you'd see the performers more often. And they would do the thing and then they'd come out and talk about the thing. And it almost felt like the point of the Muppets was we're pushing the envelope of puppetry and we're talking about it too, because that helps people get interested in it and it spreads the word of puppetry. And, I'm Jim Henson. I'm the modern Walt Disney, and this is my thing. And not seeing them for as long as we haven't seen them, to the point where Kermit's hosting The Tonight Show and not Jim hosting The Tonight Show. Mm-hmm. It's they're almost too good at being puppeteers. And I think I look back at the 5 years of the Muppet Show and I'm I said so much mean stuff about this. But then I just read about they work 7 days a week basically. They have they have to do all the music, they have to do all the recording, they have to do all the rehearsal. Then they have to have the guest star on and make them feel comfortable and do that all with them. And then they just are sitting around and there's dozens and dozens of people pouring their souls into this. But you just don't really see it on the screen. And I wish they had done this more. I wish every season they had a camera person filming below the thing. And then you see then you have clips from the whole thing and maybe appreciate it more.
Well, I think that's touches on something that Frank Oz talks about in this documentary, where he talks about being a puppeteer and how sometimes that's good because it means you can go into the supermarket and buy a can of beans and no one will bother you.
Yeah.
But it also means that when you want someone to bother you because you're technically famous, no one bothers you. And he says it depends on how he feels when he wakes up in the morning, whether or not he wants to be famous and recognized, but he never is.
He's a pretty famous guy anyway. But I'm sure Jerry Nelson probably went basically his whole life just being the big beardy guy walking down the street. No one's going to recognize the big beardy guy.
Yeah, I think especially like, at a Comic-Con or some sort of thing like that, I'm sure he got recognized a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, just walking down the street in his hometown or whatever, I'm sure he wasn't getting a lot of people running up to him for autographs. But I agree that this special sort of gave me an appreciation for the puppeteers that it's not that I didn't have an appreciation for the puppeteers before, but I think this sort of like just showed off how much they actually have to go through and how much they're doing on a weekly basis, how much Frank Oz is doing on a weekly basis as a part of the whole creative team. They show parts with him where he's coming up with ideas that like demonstrably make things better.
Where I was thinking the whole time too. I was like, you got to listen to Frank. Come on.
Yeah, there's a part where they're going through and talking about the what's it called?
Another opening, another show. That one with the curtains.
Yes, and it seems like everyone else in the room is kind of down on this sketch idea. And when we talked about that episode, like it was one of our favorite things we've ever seen the Muppets do.
Yeah, that's like an all-timer Muppet Show sketch.
And I think it's Jim that says, "It seemed like a scenery joke."
Yeah,
and Jerry Jules like, "What's wrong with a scenery joke?" And Frank steps in to save the day and basically says, like, well, what if Bo was in the back messing with the ropes? And Kermit's like, Bo, what are you doing? And it's like, that's the whole concept of that sketch.
I don't even know what it would be without that part.
That's what I was wondering, too. Like, they don't elaborate on what it was before that.
I guess just curtains closing on them, which is pretty dumb. Like,
yeah, if it was just that,
to watch.
Not as good. But having Bo and Beaker back there messing up the ropes, good joke. Good job, Frank.
Yeah. There were a lot of times when I was reading the book too, there's a part where he's in a meeting and he's mad because he hates the Pops cold openings. And he's like,
want to come on the show and talk about that, Frank?
Yeah. He's like, these aren't working. They're not as fun as when Scooter would come on. And everyone else is like, oh, well, they're fine. But that between that and then this scene, I was like, he would be our friend. He could be there and be like, you're right, Frank.
Come on, Frank.
Let's hide the Pops puppet. We'll have to do Scooter.
Yeah, there's a few times throughout this that they are interviewing Frank Oz, and he actually, I think, aside from Jim, gets the most screen time of like talking to the camera and talking about the Muppets. Mm-hmm. But he gets to sort of like, Jim talks a lot about sort of the behind the scenes, the people, the business side of things. Frank is the one there talking about the characters and elaborating on what the Muppets themselves are and why this works, which I think is great to like see that the performers have this understanding. But he describes them as these idiots are rushing on from backstage to onstage, and they do this every week. They don't give up. It's a very warm, affectionate family. Well, and even runs through a whole list of like the dynamics, because he talks about how like these characters are very human and that they have pet peeves, they have likes and dislikes. Then he goes through this train. I wrote it down. It says, Piggy thinks Gonzo's a creep. Gonzo loves the chickens. Kermit wants the show to get moving. Piggy wants Kermit. Floyd can't stand the pig. Janice and Floyd are very tight together, but they hate the pig's dog. Foo-Foo gets mad at Fozzie. Fozzie's scared to go on. And Statler and Waldorf heckle Fozzie.
At first he says Statler and Waldorf hate Fozzie, and then he goes, well, they don't hate Fozzie. Which I thought was really cute. Because they don't hate Fozzie. They need him.
Because he catches himself. He's like, Statler and Waldorf hate, well, they don't hate Fozzie.
You can't hate Fozzie. They wouldn't even have their part on the show if it wasn't for Fozzie.
I also feel like it's interesting the way people talk on the internet about the Muppets now versus the way they would have talked about them, I think, back then if the internet and social media existed. Because I feel like people get mad at Muppet performers these days for like out of character moments or referring to them without this reverence baked into the Muppets. And yet, hearing Frank Oz call Miss Piggy the pig is something that I'm like, if Eric Jacobson was doing an interview these days and was like, oh yeah, the pig, I feel like Twitter would get mad at him and be like, I can't believe he just called Miss Piggy the pig. Have some respect, man.
Yeah. And it is very stupid that it's like, oh, it's okay if Frank does it. Because it does. It elevates them too high up.
Yeah.
It's almost like the Holy Moly problem was like they're afraid to use the Muppets or something because it's like, oh, they're so perfect. Like, but they're not. They suck.
And I think that's like, we've talked about that so many times, I feel like, on here, where the thing that they have with the Muppets characters that they don't use often enough is that these guys are bad at what they do.
Mm-hmm.
They have the heart. They keep trying to make it good, and they just fail repeatedly. And they're not like, I don't know. The content they're in keeps treating them like these like 70-year-old characters who are held up on this pedestal.
Who are showbiz gods.
Right. And it's just very bizarre to have those two ideas running into each other. And it's like you either have to fully commit to the idea of them being the most famous people in the world and everyone loves Kermit the Frog almost in the way that 2011 Muppets does.
Yeah.
But even then, it's like a couple characters think of him that way, but the rest of the world is like, Muppets who? Whereas I think like that's not the way I wish they would go. Like I don't want them to lean in that direction, but I feel like you have to choose a lane. You can't have it both ways.
Yeah. I think in the Muppet Show even they had it both ways a couple times, especially with Kermit, where he can function because he literally is like an old timey like TV star. So when other old timey TV stars are on, they do kind of have him be like, "Oh yeah, I've been around the block." And then Miss Piggy was just literally like famous actually in real life, especially when the Muppet Show is on. So there's like a little bit of leeway I think there, but just with those two characters, kind of like. I don't know. You can't have Scooter on and be like, oh, Scooter. Superstar Scooter.
But see, that's the thing is like, you could in the right context.
Yeah.
If you had the Muppets, like ABC series, be a thing where everyone grew up with these Muppets as characters, they know them all from the Muppet movie, etc., it would be a little different as opposed to sort of like the world they have to create when the Muppets are in the real world is that they're just like this old performing troupe that people know about but don't always necessarily love or respect or know everybody because it's like in the ABC series they reference like the Muppet Show and the Muppet movie and these things they've done in the past as things that sort of people know about. They want to get back to their roots and perform these things. But that raises questions of like, okay, does like you know, when Elizabeth Banks is visiting the Muppets on their show, does she go, oh, hey, you're Scooter from the Muppet movie?
Right.
I know
That's a
you.
good point.
You're the Dancing
That's a good
Bear
point.
song guy.
It kind of feeds into the like, what reality is seeing the backstage sections of this, and if like the Miss Piggy show Muppets newer Muppet series version of reality isn't seeing those backstage moments, like. Then you saw Scooter like 3 times. And then I guess it does make sense that you'd just be like, that he'd still be working as a gopher. But if he was in the Muppet movie, there'd be like a whole other assistant to take care of Scooter at that point.
Right. And I think all of this, like the sort of, I won't call them plot holes because that feels like not what they are. It's like very deliberately they are choosing to not establish a thorough canon in a lot of ways with the location of the studio or the theater, the relationship between Piggy and Kermit throughout the years. But I think it's sort of like time travel in movies where if any time travel movie, you think about it too hard, it unravels, it becomes sort of like bad or plot holey. But if the content itself is good enough, it sort of distracts you from those unravelings. And you don't think about the way of like, well, but if Marty McFly did that, wouldn't he not, whatever. And so it's like, you don't think about that because Back to the Future is just a good movie. So it's like, I think that's the thing is like what works most of the time with the Muppets is that they create a fiction that they just throw us into and we're like, cool, yeah, I buy it, whatever. This is Scooter's role in this is this. And then when they sort of like peel back the layers a bit or like pull back the curtain to show like, oh no, we were famous and now we're not or whatever. That's like it forces you to question something that you don't necessarily need to question.
Right.
And so it's like, that's why I think it's hard. That's why I think we're not currently writing a Muppet Show is because we don't know how to do it better. But I think it's something where you have to commit and you have to have your own version of this fiction that people aren't worried about pulling apart because it's good enough on its own.
Well, maybe if they make enough bad shows over the next few years, then it can just reset to be like, we suck. And you'll be like, yeah, you do suck. You're right. And then they can feed on that to be good again, you know?
But I think this is a prime example of this working is Muppets Haunted Mansion, where
Yeah.
they created this world where the Muppets are in it. Like, they kind of know each other. We don't get a lot of insight into, like, the Halloween party Muppets. They just seem like friends hanging out.
Uh-huh.
But then in the world of the Haunted Mansion, we get, like, other representations of these characters playing characters.
Right.
But I don't think that in, Muppets Mayhem or the next Muppet Show thing that comes out, that Gonzo and Pepe are going to be like, wow, remember that wild time we had at that haunted mansion?
Yeah. Remember when Kermit was a ghost?
Remember when Fozzie's head came off?
It's kind of, I don't even remember why we're talking about this. It's kind of the same problem that Mickey Mouse has, I think, where there's like Mickey Mouse as like corporate mascot, and then there's like Mickey Mouse in like those newer Mickey Mouse cartoons where he's a complete loser.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like one of those Mickey Mouses sucks, and nobody like really likes that Mickey Mouse, but he has to be that way because he's just like, because that's what all the basic people know, you know? It's like the normies know that Mickey Mouse.
Well, that's what I think when you're talking about like Kermit. Like, you could do a Kermit that is sort of mean and yelling at Piggy and all this stuff, or threatening to fire her.
But then people would make TikToks that are like Kermit character assassination.
Yeah, and so it is interesting of sort of, you have to play into a bit of people's perception of the character versus what people like a natural progression of the character. Like, if someone, perfect example of this is when bands are sort of changing their sound or wanting to develop or grow. You have two reactions. Either people are like mad that they changed, like they're like, oh my God, I can't believe you don't sound like the same band anymore.
Right.
And so sometimes then bands will go, okay, well, we'll make an album that sounds like our old album. And they go, ugh, it sounds worse than your old album. You should go back to try and make different things. And it's like, what? Why? You can't be happy. Because every band, I feel like, that's been around for like 20 years does the same thing, where about 20, 25 years into the career, they'll go back and they'll hire the producer who made their first album to produce their new comeback album. And they'll be like, you know what, guys? We're going back to our roots. We're going to do an album with our very first producer in the spirit of the one that you remember. You guys liked that one a lot. Remember? You didn't like the last 5, but you really liked that first one. So we're bringing that guy back. We're going to make another record that you guys love. And then it kind of goes, meh, whatever. You tried.
Yeah. Or at worst, it's like, that's sad. That's pathetic that you would try to do that.
Yeah. But it is that thing where it's like, I think of the idea of bringing Frank Oz back to the Muppets.
Yeah.
And I like the idea because it seems like Frank Oz, at his heart, does understand the Muppets.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think there's a world in which they give Frank Oz or Brian Henson or any of these men the full creative reins of these things.
Right.
I think it's, Disney is this powerhouse. I think it's the same thing with anything Marvel or Star Wars. They can hire whatever cool new director they want. At the end of the day, Disney's going to go, not that one. No, you don't get to do that.
I think the big difference is with Marvel and Star Wars and Muppets is something that they mention a lot a couple times in the book, is that Jim didn't want it to be syndicated, but then ended up being happy that it was syndicated because they didn't have to like follow anybody's rules. So it could really be like idiosyncratic. And I think up until Jim Henson's death, and even past that, it was like idiosyncratic, like the vision, not of one man, but of like 12 people, or like some small amount of people who are not afraid to like goof around. But to have the Muppets in the hands of an entity that is terrified of goofing around, I think that, but like Marvel and Star Wars at this point, they're just like a collective idea and not as much one person's vision.
Now I want a Muppets What If series. So that you could.
That's what every Muppets is, though.
But I want like episode by episode, so that way you can do like a Western episode of the Muppet Show. You can do a sci-fi episode of the Muppet Show, but like fully throw them into it, and like not just the Muppets try to do a Western like we see on the Muppet Show, but like it is a Western. All of our characters are playing characters in a Western. Next week it's a sci-fi thing. That's a way you could keep up this idiosyncratic thing where we don't need to even know if Miss Piggy and Kermit are dating outside of this show, because we don't get to see that behind the scenes. All we see is it's like Muppet Christmas Carol. Muppet Christmas Carol, there isn't a moment where Kermit goes, by the way, I'm Kermit. Like, he's just,
There's kind of a moment where Gonzo goes, by the way, I'm Gonzo, a little bit.
well, yeah, but he's the narrator. So it's like,
Yeah.
you know, they're establishing him. He's like, I'm Charles Dickens in this, everyone. I think, you think I'm Gonzo. I'm not.
Yeah.
And I think you could have moments like that in this fictional series I'm creating. But I think having them play characters every
Right.
week would be more fun than trying to like unravel this lore. Because I think it
Right.
goes back to the Star Wars problem sometimes where it's like, all right, we need a movie or a TV show to explain this exact 6-month period in the Star Wars lore. Let's
Yeah.
unravel and dive into all of this. Oh, by the way, this character happened to be walking by in the background at that 6-month period. So let's get C-3PO in there.
Yeah. How did Boba Fett get his ship back? Was it really boring? Oh, well, we'll spend 2 episodes on it.
But how did he get out of the pit? Oh, he just did? All right.
Climbed out of the pit. Oh, that seems like that would have been more interesting, but oh well.
But getting back to the Muppets and Mayhem documentary, there are a few times throughout this that I really liked seeing the, I won't say perilous, but troubling situations that they had to put the puppeteers in to get some shots done the way they want them to get done. And we've speculated about some of these in the past, but for instance, it starts off right away with the motorcycle number where they're like blowing fans of fog and smoke right into Richard Hunt's face at one point. And there's like a fan like 6 inches in front of his face and he looks miserable.
In the book, they talk about using fans in that smoke, which is a lot of times like dust, and how because in Pigs in Space, they talk about the one where the asteroid punctures the ship, and they talk about how horrible that one was to do because there's dust flying everywhere and fans going everywhere. They also talk about the book. Remember the books fall on the newsman's head, and we're like, how'd they do that without killing people?
Yeah.
And they just put a hard hat on Jim, and that was it.
Well, that was, I noticed near the end of this, you see them shooting a Swedish Chef sketch, and you see Frank Oz wearing a hard hat at one point.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense because they do drop a
guy's
lot of heavy shit on top of
kitchen
them.
tools everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think overall with this, there's a lot of moments in here that are great. There's a lot of moments that you'll see clipped out if you follow like Muppet Twitter things. There's the clip where Jim and Frank are rehearsing, it seems like a promo where Kermit is telling Fozzie that in other countries people dub over Fozzie's voice. And so there are other bears speaking for him, and Kermit tells him that they are sometimes funnier, and it breaks his little bear heart.
Yeah.
But there are also moments throughout that I'm like, oh, give me an hour of this. Like, I just want a table read, uncut, because we get like a few moments from some of the script meetings and some of the table reads that feel like the most insight we've gotten into these processes. And we see one table read in particular where Jim can't get through his lines for Yvette's hospital as he's performing Ralph's lines. And everyone seems to be having a great time, and they feel comfortable laughing at Jim as he's messing up his lines. And yeah, I just wanted to see more of that kind of stuff, and like the discussions between Frank and Jerry Jewell. I mean, more Jerry Jewell in general would be great.
It was great to see him. I would have loved to hear more from him too. And he says a lot in the book.
Yeah.
But it was very interesting to see him. Jim seems like, after reading the book, I was like, Jim kind of seems like a bad boss. He's very passive. And I do think Frank is there because he feels like he has to step up a lot of the times and actually be like, no, this idea actually sucks. Because I think visually Jim could be like, no, that didn't look right. But I think with the scripts, it seems like he was kind of just like, that's great. I trust you implicitly. And then Frank had to be there. And I had forgotten that Frank and Jerry were partners before Jim hired him. So maybe that was part of it too. That Frank like knew this guy and was like, no, that sucks, Jerry.
Yeah, like in the Sam and Friends book, there's actually a good chunk on Jerry Jewell, which is nice to read too. That we're giving you all these reading assignments. If you want to know more about Jerry Jewell specifically, read the Muppets and Men book, which is really hard to find and really expensive. Or just go get the Sam and Friends book. There's a lot of good stuff in there too. But
is it Muppets and Men on archive.org maybe?
I don't think so. I think I've looked for it before. So unfortunately, I don't think so. But in the Sam and Friends book, Jerry Jewell basically says that if Frank Oz had been older at the time Jim met them both, he doesn't think that he would have ended up working with Jim because
Oh.
he sort of felt like Jim met the two of them and was like, well, Frank's 17 and still in high school. So, hey, Jerry, how about you come work with the Muppets?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know if that's the case, obviously, but that's the way at least at some point Jerry Jewell sort of felt is like, well, one of us was necessary, and it could have been Frank if he was just a little bit older. And Jerry Jewell in this talks about the creative freedom of writing for the Muppets, because he says basically you can write anything on paper and someone is standing by to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that idea is a great place to start with when it comes to the Muppet Show specifically. And I think that's why Jerry Jewell is praised rightly for so much of his stuff, is because he's not thinking within the confines of reality at all times, which is a perk of being able to make a puppet show, is that you can say like, well, what if we had a 6-foot tall dragon attacking a tiny man on a boat? And they'd be like, yeah, sure, we'll figure it out.
Okay, yeah. We got a bunch of people we pay a lot of money to make puppets really fast, so this should be fine.
Yeah.
I think the book, a lot of times the book will say like, this is complete insanity. Asparagus hatching out of an egg. And it made me wonder if like either the bar was way lower in 1981 for what was insane, or what, or if the book was just like playing it up, I guess. Because none of the Muppet Show really is like super avant-garde. Really, it's just a bit strange.
I mean,
But maybe back then, that was different.
maybe for the late 70s on like network TV, you wouldn't necessarily see a long-nosed puppet eating a tire to Flight of the Bumblebee.
I suppose.
Like
Yeah.
that was not a very
Gonzo
common
nowadays-
thing.
And maybe it's very telling that nowadays a lot of people are like, Gonzo's the most relatable Muppet. And back then it was like, what a weirdo.
Everyone thought
'Cause
they were a
everybody was
Kermit.
just like, yeah. But it turned out, this is very apt. It turned out Kermit was a piece of shit. And that Gonzo was the great one the cool one all along.
Kermit's a boomer.
Yeah, Kermit's a boomer. He has big boomer mentality, is right.
There were some moments throughout this too where Jim Henson, clearly a man who's, making a lot of money, wildly successful, but
Yeah.
like downplays everything. I think the very first thing he says in this is like, I'm just delighted with the show's success. And it's like, yeah, you talk like it was just like, 10 of your friends got together to watch this show, not it's like the most watched show in the world at this moment.
Uh-huh. He's just been waiting on the edge of his seat to be able to sit in front of a camera and talk really boring about this stuff. He's taking advantage of it.
He's got a very like laid back demeanor in this, where he's like
Yeah.
got his little coffee cup. I think it's even like a Kermit coffee cup, and he's
Uh-huh.
like slouched back in front of his Wallow puppets, and he's just like,
Yeah.
my job's kind of like Kermit to keep the crazies all together.
Yeah. In the book, it's like he walked in with his sweater, his custom made sweater with Kermit's face all over it. It's like, what is wrong with this guy?
He's proud of his work, Sam.
But he doesn't say he's proud of it. He just wears shirts with his characters on. And he can't be, and he's proud of everybody else. It does seem like he's like, everybody's doing a great job, which is terrific. That's a great way to be. But it is also kind of funny that he's like, I can't let anyone forget that I am the guy that is Kermit the Frog. I will wear this sweater.
Yeah, I feel like if you would have made like a 3-hour version of this documentary, Jim could have went on for much, much longer talking
Yeah.
about each and every performer.
That's probably why they cut it at the interesting part, because it's like, and then he went on for about 25 minutes. So
Yeah, he started talking about our English performer, Louise Gold, and 8 hours later, we were still talking about Louise Gold.
that was a part of the book that I was kind of disappointed in, was that Jim and Frank get a whole section, but then Jerry, Scooter,
Richard,
and gosh, who's the
Dave
other one?
Goals.
Oh yeah, that's who gets it. They get like a chapter, and then Steve and Luis and Kathy, they get like 2 pages. And it's like, come on, guys.
Yeah, you can feel the hierarchy a bit, both in the book and in the documentary, of like, okay, who's been here the longest? Who sort of like is playing a main character versus the side new characters?
Who's a man? Important one as
That
well.
also, yes, especially at this point. But I guess, still today, it's not like they've exploded in the number of female puppeteers working with the
Right.
Muppets,
Yeah.
especially at least on main characters. But you definitely do feel that hierarchy of like, all right, Frank, very important. Jerry, also very important. Doesn't necessarily do as much as Frank, but we love him.
But he's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
He's got a great voice.
Yeah, they talk a lot in here about his great singing voice.
Yeah.
And I think one of the most fun parts for me in this that was one of those, man, I wish I was there, wish I was in the room kind of moments, was every time they show them recording a song, they seem like
That does look very fun.
they seem like they're having the most fun time, specifically the In the Navy number where they're all just like in this recording studio all together, recording at the same time, doing their fun voices.
That's probably why I liked the Muppet Alphabet album so much, was because it just seems like they don't even have to perform with the puppets, and they're just like purely in their head, like getting to have the full energy of their creativity. Another fun part, speaking of people who sing good, Richard Hunt also, when he has his little interview, and he was like, when I first came, I was like this. Hey, boss, what's going on? And it's my voice, but younger. And it's just the same exact voice he does now. He just sounds exactly like Scooter.
Yeah. I like the little moments you get with, like, Richard Hunt basically just talking about how he was a little kid when he joined up. Jerry Nelson doesn't really I don't think he says anything.
I don't think he does either.
To the camera.
But I think he's demonstrably very shy based on what we've seen of him otherwise. Like when he was on whatever that long talk show was on that they were all on.
Oh, yeah, the Dick Cavett show.
And he sat with his back to the camera, basically, the entire time.
I know a lot of Jerry Nelson's life around this time, too, was also a bit chaotic. And throughout a lot of the Muppet Show, the reason that Jerry Nelson appears more or less in certain episodes is because his daughter had cystic fibrosis.
Right.
And she died in 1982, so not that long after this. But I know that he had to travel a lot to take care of her. And so I feel like this is one of those things, too, where when they're making a documentary, they're scheduling time for interviews. He's like, yeah, I'm not going to use my downtime to do an interview. I'm going to go back and take care of my daughter.
Right.
There is a weird moment with Jerry Nelson, though, that I could not figure out. It's when they show the Gophers Are Smarter number and they start to pan out afterwards. Jerry Nelson is like the frontmost gopher. And as the camera starts to pan out, he has a book on his lap that he picks up and is trying to show the camera, like, look at this book, look at it. And obviously, because this is an old, unrestored copy of this special, it's on this old DVD rip, and then it's on YouTube, you can't really tell what the book cover is or why he'd be showing it. So we're just left to speculate. Is this, a dirty book that he thinks it's funny to show the camera? Is this a friend's book that he's trying to hype up? Why is he showing us this book?
Maybe it's the Bible.
Hey, read this, you sinners.
Gosh, it looks like a pulpy book, kind of like.
That's what I was thinking. It does seem like just like
it's a weird shape.
Maybe I'll post the book cover screenshot on Twitter and see if anyone has any idea what that could possibly be.
Huh.
It just it stood out to me as a moment of one of those like, hey, mom, I'm on TV kind of moments of trying to like get yourself over in a way of like, this is about me now. And it felt like he was trying to show off that book for a reason, but I could not figure out what it could be.
It almost looks like a comic book.
I don't know. It's pretty thick.
Is it?
Yeah, it's got like a thickness to it. Like it looks like.
Oh yeah, you're right.
He's got a bookmark in the middle of it. It's like a novel.
Like it's dog-eared as well.
Yeah, but
we got to know what this book is, guys. Come on.
I feel like someone's got to know if they're familiar with the books of the era. But it's quite pixelated and quite blurry. But
yeah, but maybe you could tell there's like that black bar on top, and if you know like,
what
this
series,
publisher was doing this around this time.
It doesn't.
Is a penguin something.
It also doesn't help that like the figure on the front of the book kind of looks like Bigfoot in the Bigfoot footage of
yes,
it like walking
it does.
away.
It's doing that same thing.
So it's like
maybe it's a book about Bigfoot.
Maybe
he looks like a man who would be in the forest looking for Bigfoot, kind of.
Maybe he faked the Bigfoot footage. Maybe that's the true.
It's just him back there.
Yeah.
Maybe it's Sweetums.
That's the okay, there we go. That's one episode. What I want is a Cars on the Road approach to the Muppets. Where they just
How are
like
Muppets born? How do Muppets die? What's inside of Muppets? I need to know a lot of things.
But yeah, we get the episode where Sweetums is being hunted in the woods because people think he's Bigfoot.
Because they found one of his old home movies.
I think this is perfect. I think, give us the book. Let us start writing this, Disney.
I do think if that would be like a deep dive into like all the questions you were too afraid to ask about the Muppets would be kind of fun.
Well, and it's like the sort of the overcorrection leaning in the other direction of it's like, okay, do this one version where you don't worry about the lore at all. Like you just make a sci-fi, you make a Western, whatever. Or fuck it. let's explain what Muppet bones look like.
Yeah. Just even simply, where was the Muppet Show located? Please tell me.
We just established that there's 5 Muppet Show theaters across the U.S. and in Europe, and there are
They're a
pneumatic
touring company. I didn't think about this.
there are pneumatic tubes that they travel between theaters.
I really like that explanation.
Just at the end of the night, everyone just gets into a big ball of fleece and just goes.
Yeah. That's the tube that Miss Piggy's talking about.
Walk me to the tube, Kermit. I mean, we're all going to the tube, Piggy. We have to get back to Philadelphia. And then, one whole episode of our show is them in the tube between England and Philadelphia, and the conversations they have as they travel in a tube underneath the Atlantic Ocean.
Yes, Gonzo would love that. He'd be rock hard the entire time. Well. Another thing I liked about this special was that we both work in production, and there was things where I was like, hey, we do that, and it made me feel better about myself. Where it's like, yeah, this sounds about as fucked up as everything we do. And like
Like what?
I don't know, it's just like, you got to do this, and you got to do this, and you got to do this, and you got to do this. And it's like David Later did this and this and this, and he's responsible for walking the people around, but he also does the money stuff. And it's like, oh, okay. I guess everywhere, everybody's just like, what do we need to do? Okay, I guess I got to do that. Or like, this thing broke and everybody sat around for an hour. It's like, if something broke and everyone sat around for an hour on SciShow Kids, I would feel so bad. But then I could think back to the Muppet Show and be like, well, you know what? They probably broke stuff all the time.
There was one moment that stuck out to me where Jim is talking about the In the Navy number.
Yeah.
And he says, we spent all day on the Viking number, and we really don't have time to spend all day on the Viking
That made
number.
me sad. That was a weird button to that, because it was like watching this like beautiful process, and then he was like, that wasn't really worth all the effort we put into it.
Yeah, it's like when you have 3 days to make a show, you can't really spend one day on one 2-minute section of that show.
But that's the kind of thing that when you're like the executive producer of a show, like I think he probably should have flagged that a little earlier, maybe.
Maybe David Laser had the day off that day, so he wasn't around to keep everyone in line.
That's something they talk about too. There's like that episode where Kermit's sick or something and Fozzie has to take over and everything goes horrible. And they filmed that. I think you said this maybe when we were talking about that episode. They filmed that when Jim was like out of town and everything went horribly.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
yeah,
I think that they were prone to falling into disorder. Do you know? Just like these SciShow Kids can do when I'm not there. I get the footage back and I'm like, hey, what did you guys? Come on, guys.
What happened? You didn't even put the puppet on your hand. It's just your naked hand there in the frame.
You forgot.
Speaking of David Laser, though, we get some small moments of him in this where I immediately thought, you know who would play him great in a biopic? Like, not his biopic, probably, but like the Jim Henson biopic. Stanley Tucci, I think, would make a great David Laser.
Yeah.
I think he could just pull it off pretty well.
Yeah.
But this did make me think, and I ended up tweeting this and finding out an answer. I tweeted out, whatever happened to David Laser? Because
that's a great question. I never thought of that.
I looked into this on Muppet Wiki and Wikipedia and stuff, and there's very, very little information about David Laser out there on the internet. And it turned out that he sort of just like quietly retired for a bit, and then after Jim died, he came out of retirement very briefly to sort of like help wrangle the Muppets and be like, yeah, I'll help you out a little bit. It's sort of an advisory thing, it seemed like. But then he sort of, again, sort of like slowly disappeared into the background. And so I was like, I don't really know anything about this man. No one's really talking about this man. So is he alive? What is he doing? Found out, thanks to Brian J. Jones, author of the Jim Henson biography, that apparently David Laser retired for health reasons. But as of 2013, he was still alive because he sent a lovely note to Brian J. Jones about Jim's book, about the Jim bio.
But what about now?
Well, so Brian J. Jones said that at the time that he was writing the book, no one was entirely certain where David Laser was. So he didn't get to interview him personally. And Brian said, I think he's still alive, but I couldn't say with certainty.
What the heck?
Yeah, so who knows?
That's very interesting.
Yeah, I think David Laser just, retired for health reasons and maybe just doesn't, obviously not a spotlight kind of guy. Just retired to live out the rest of his life. And
But maybe like nobody knows where to like what city or what.
No.
Because you could look at like the death records, I guess, if you knew what city he lived in.
And that's what I tried first. I was trying to like search like David Laser obituary to see if he had died, and I couldn't find anything. So as of right now, the best we have to go off of is that the author of the Jim Henson biography thinks that David Laser could be alive.
And no one on Earth would know better than him except David Laser, probably.
Yeah, and
his family.
maybe somebody at the Henson family has been in touch with him more recently. But yeah, as far as we know, David Laser is still around, but retired quite a while ago for health reasons.
He seemed fun. The book made him seem very fun. And his job seemed fun.
Oh,
'Cause
yeah.
He just got to pal around with the celebrities and be like, introduce him to everybody. That's not obviously just all he had to do, because I'm sure a lot of it was like, oh gosh, we need money. But I think if you're the executive producer of the most successful show in the world, then probably you don't really sweat about that as much. But he seemed like he had a pretty good gig going.
Yeah, when a good part of your job is just to like hang out with the most famous people in the world and show them a good time, like that seems like a pretty chill
You don't have
job.
to put your arm up above your head for 17 hours a day. That really struck me too. Like, I guess it's important to remember that they didn't do it year round, but the fact that they worked 7 days a week basically that seems intense.
It seems like one of those things that wouldn't happen these days.
Yeah.
There would be a union who would step in and say, hey, maybe we don't do this to everyone and make their lives terrible. But it is fascinating.
Well, no, I think that maybe was the case, because there is a part at the end of the book where they're shooting the promos, and it's like they only had like 15 minutes to do it, and I think that was because everyone was gonna go home.
Well, so I don't think that though is a union that was protecting the puppeteers, because like in Brian J. Jones's book, and I think maybe in Muppets and Men they talk about this in the book. Of the unions for the crew people, like the TV crew.
Yeah, that's what I thought you meant. But yeah, you're right.
I meant like a puppetry union.
No one cares about that. They're just having fun with puppets.
Right. They're just wiggling dolls. And but yeah, I think most of the time they were up against the clock because the TV studio would literally turn off the lights if they went over time.
Right.
Like, no, you're done for the day. Our people are leaving.
I'm sure that the people in the position of the core Muppet performers probably wouldn't even consider like that they needed the protection of a union, I would guess, because they're like the most well-paid puppeteers in the world and are having fun. But that's a bad precedent to set for the future.
I wanted to make sure we talk about some of the behind-the-scenes people on this documentary, which I didn't think was going to be interesting when we started to plan this episode out. But then, as I'm watching it, the very first credit that rolls at the end of this movie is camera.
Behind the scenes of the documentary.
Yeah. Is camera Roger Deakins. And for us film school nerds, Roger Deakins is a extremely famous name because he is the cinematographer on most, if not all, of the Coen brothers movies, as well as Blade Runner 2049, 1917, a lot of the recent Bond movies. He is the man you get when you want your movie to look gorgeous. And apparently he got his start making music videos and documentaries back in the 70s and 80s. And this was like not that long before he started to become a very famous cinematographer, because he did this.
Well, he got started a lot later than I had thought he did. For some reason, I thought he worked on the original Blade Runner too.
No, I think his first sort of breakout role as a DP is 1984.
Yeah.
And then after that, he did Sid and Nancy. And then I think that's sort of when his career started to pick up a bit more, and he eventually started to do Barton Fink and Hudsucker Proxy, Shawshank Redemption, Fargo, all those like huge like 90s movies. And now he just is, again, I think he's won multiple Oscars at this point for his work. And so seeing his name pop up there, I was like, that is wild.
That
the same man who shot, 1917, shot Jim and Frank bullshitting about what bear is funnier than Fozzie.
Yeah. Little Raji Dinkins? What's his name? Roger Deakins.
Raji Deakins.
Little Raji Dinkins. It's also, there's like a kind of an alarming moment in the book where they're talking about, like whenever they talk about things that in the future, like they're talking about Steve Whitmire, and it's like, someday he'll learn. Jim's like, he's too shy to do voices, but someday he'll learn how to do voices. And it's kind of like, oh.
Yeah, watch the throne, Jim.
Yeah, and another part where it's like, I think even if we were all gone, these characters would continue to live because they're so fleshed out and like everybody loves them, even without the performers. And then there's another part where they talk about a potential. It wasn't like gonna happen, but they're like, oh, I think the Electric Mayhem could probably like carry a show of their own, and maybe Floyd would be the star of it because he's like the person who keeps them together, just like Kermit. I don't know if Floyd's the star of it, but
based on the press they've been doing for Muppets Mayhem so far, it seems like Floyd was probably going to be
he's got a personal connection with all of the other characters, pretty much like the most connection.
Well, and he's also, I think, got sort of the most depth to him. Like Janice also has some depth, but Dr. Teeth is just a monster.
Yeah.
Zoot and Lips are doing their thing. Animal. So you got to
don't even speak anymore. So
yeah,
that's hard to make a show about him.
So you got to rely a lot on Floyd and Janice in this. So I'm sure those two will be at the forefront of.
Yeah, I feel like Floyd and Animal could also be like a duo because it's like Beaker and Bunsen. It's like the not speaky guy and the guy who's trying to direct him the best he can.
Well, and I feel like obviously the band is a lot of times called Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem.
Yeah.
So it feels like Dr. Teeth is the natural leader, but we've discussed many times where it feels like Dr. Teeth is probably just the guy who shows up on the day and then runs away and is like, all right, Floyd, get me my money.
Yeah. He is never there backstage talking, which is because he's, Jim Henson, but also he's just not. There's another part in the book where they bemoan where Jerry Jewell is like, oh, my biggest regret is that Rolf couldn't continue to be a big star, but Kermit had to be back there. But I know we could have done more with Rolf. And that made me very sad.
Yeah.
Because they probably love Rolf so much. Because they probably had the time of their lives with Rolf.
I always wish for more Rolf, which I feel like we get that little glimmer in the 2015 series where he's running the bar and him and Kermit have a very sweet moment. And I'm like, oh, what could have been?
Yeah.
A few other behind-the-scenes people I just wanted to mention to you real quick that I looked into. The sound guy on this documentary was Godfrey Kirby, who worked on Monty Python and the Holy Grail. The sound editor, Rodney Holland, worked on Barry Lyndon and Popeye. The dubbing mixer, Tony Anscombe, worked on Titanic. And then the assistant to the producer was Martin Baker on this, who was the floor manager on The Muppet Show, but also went on to produce Fraggle Rock, Labyrinth, Muppets from Space, 2011 Muppets. And his LinkedIn says he's still an executive producer at the Jim Henson Company.
Wow.
So he's one of the longest tenured people, I guess, at this point with the Muppets. And then the director of this, there was two directors, Peter Barry and Harry Kokelis. Peter Barry has very few credits to his name. But Harley Kokelis, I think I might have said Harry, Harley Kokelis, was the second unit director on Empire Strikes Back.
Wow. Just a bunch of British people.
Yeah, a bunch of people
With
who
film
worked on
industry jobs.
very big films that were shot in England.
Yeah, on that specific soundstage in England.
Yeah. But yeah, it is also worth pointing out that Roger Deakins was 32 at the time of this. So when we say he got his start a little late, he became a very successful cinematographer in his mid to late 30s. So not that late.
Yeah. Well, we're in our mid to late 30s, and look at us.
There's hope for us. We can find our Sid and Nancy or our 1984, Sam.
If little Roger Dinkies can do it, I can do it too.
There's a moment in this where Jim talks about how much he's against violence on television. And he says there's a big difference between someone stabbed with a knife and an obvious toy figure being thrown around.
Is there to children, though? I don't know.
Well, I think he rationalizes it by saying this is a healthy outlet for those violent urges that he has. Because he's basically trying to explain why he thinks violence is funny. And he's basically saying well,
when a Muppet gets shot point blank in the face.
It's funny. It's a toy. Get over it. It's a joke. We also get to see Frank Oz cramming himself under the couch in the Roger Moore episode, whereas he says, in order to make it look good up there, it has to be uncomfortable down here. And boy, does he look uncomfortable.
Yeah, and all that effort for that sketch, which he does great in, but
Yeah.
not my favorite guest star.
It feels like, and I'm sure they do this more nowadays, it feels like every set or fake couch or whatever needed like 3 more inches of clearance room.
Yeah.
It just seems like everyone's just slightly uncomfortable. Like when you walk into a house and the ceilings are just slightly lower than normal, but they're not too low where you have to duck. But you're just kind of like, I don't know about this. Like that's how it feels like everything was built, where it's just like, if this was a little higher, I might have a good time. But because of the way it's built, I have to be immensely uncomfortable.
They also had to fit all that old-timey shit in there, like monitors with cords and stuff like that. That wouldn't really be as big a deal anymore. But also, everybody who worked for the Muppets was like more than 6 feet tall, which is also unfortunate.
Yeah, they. I wish they had showed off a little bit more the like platform where the celebrities would be walking around on. I feel like they didn't show the sort of height disparity that clearly a lot of like, here's
in the
where
book, there's a few shots of it though where it's like, this looks kind of scary.
Right. Like I'm often thinking of that, like they have to walk in and out of these shots. So clearly they are like just sort of like setting up platforms that work for this scene.
Yeah.
They're probably not there all the time. And they have to weave in and out of certain things and like walk past puppeteers. And it just seems a little bit treacherous.
Like there's a part with, who's the Blue Bayou singing lady?
Linda Ronstadt.
Yeah, Linda Ronstadt at the bottom of the stairs talking to Kermit, and it's just like a square under her that she's standing on at the base of the stairs, and then the rest is nothing.
There was a behind-the-scenes moment in this that I think we had talked about previously, or at least theorized about, when we see these Salzburg sauerkraut singers.
Yeah.
Because the pigs in that number are like throwing these plates of sauerkraut all around, and they dip off screen for a second and come back with full plates of sauerkraut that they can again throw into the air.
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned in that
I
episode,
think we literally said there's probably a PA standing there with fistful of shredded iceberg lettuce waiting to put it back on there.
turns out, yeah,
And
it's
that's
exactly
what it was. Yeah.
we get to see the pulled back version of that scene, and you just see people with plates of sauerkraut standing there just waiting to be like, and restock, and restock.
I can't remember all of them, but there were a few moments when I was watching and reading this where I was like, I was right.
There is one moment in here that's very fun, but also a little gross to watch, where they're recording the New Zealand singing fish Marvin Suggs like number where he's like pulling on the fish to sing.
He's squeezing them.
Yeah, which you don't think about much when you're watching it of how that's done. But then when they show you in the recording studio, all of these performers filling their mouths with water and just gargling into microphones.
Yeah.
It's a little more gross.
It goes on for kind of a long time. And at first I was not grossed out by it. But by the end I was like, I don't want to see Steve gargling anymore, please.
Yeah, no, it was a very visceral negative reaction the first time I was watching this, and was just wondering how long this was going to go on for.
I have a big announcement also. I have to add somebody to my list of 70s women I'm in love with.
Is it Louise Gold?
No.
Oh.
Kathy Mullen.
Oh, Kathy Mullen.
A little bit less my type usually than Louise Gold, who looks just like Gilda Radner.
A little bit, yeah.
But Kathy Mullen, when she's talking about doing the hand thing, I was like, I'm in love with her.
Yeah, there's a moment in this in the Navy section, which again is a pretty big section of this documentary, where they're showing them rehearsing the song, working on lyrics, doing the shoot, doing all this stuff. Kathy Mullen is doing one of the sort of the background pigs, who it seems like the device they have rigged up is that she's performing the mouth with one hand, and then she's got this like clapper device between her other hand that controls both of their arms. And so the pig can clap and sing at the same time. So the pig's saying like, we want you. And the hands need to like clap along with that. And so she has to move her hand to say, we want you. And then she has to move her other hand to control the clapping of the pig. And so she's talking about how her hands are basically like hitting the alternate beats, and she's having a hard time with it. But this is apparently...
They could have built the clapper so they went the other way around. You know?
I mean, maybe.
That would have been easier.
But this was apparently the moment where Sam fell in love with Kathy Mullen.
Oh, yeah. She just was charming.
I mean, mother of Yoda. I feel like that scores
her points for sure.
I feel like it's a worthy addition to your 70s babe list.
Yeah. I didn't want to say both Kathy Mullen and Louise Gold, because it kind of seemed rude of me to be like, the two ladies are both my kind of ladies.
Just anytime Sam sees a woman with the Muppets, it's like, I'm in love.
But it's not untrue. But she's also Moki, right?
Originally, yes. First Moki, yeah.
And I love Moki. Moki was one of my earliest childhood crushes.
Well, then I guess it makes sense.
Yeah.
You could just feel the Kathy Mullen energy coming out through Moki, and you're like, I think I'm in love. Is this what love is?
Yeah. Her and Jubilee from the X-Men. They taught me what love was.
We also get to see a couple good behind-the-scenes Muppet workshop moments where you just see Mickey Mouse being carried on someone's shoulder through the frame.
In the book they say they built him like overnight or something.
Wild.
Yeah.
It's a bit distressing though to see him being carried like a dead body through the Muppet workshop.
Matt, they're not real. The
What?
Muppets aren't real, man. I hate to break it
Oh,
to you this
nuts.
way.
But then we also see Jim helping out the designers with the spy Muppets from the Roger Moore episode.
That part was cool.
Yeah. I like how much you see throughout this, just multiple moments of them just like throwing shit out there and saying like, what if we did this?
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh yeah, that works, I guess.
We have 10 minutes, so yes, this is fine.
Yeah. And this is one where he's talking about like basically his idea for this is that they'd have like these evil eyes peering out. But then he's like, you know what you did looks pretty good. Let's just go with
Yeah.
that.
In the book, it also says like, oh yeah, Jim is totally willing to like go with ideas that aren't his own that he likes. I feel like sometimes a little too willing, but those little rabbits did look good.
Yeah, and I don't think I really appreciated the sort of tearaway face nature of
No.
them either when we were watching the Roger Moore episode.
I didn't even notice or think about it,
Yeah.
which came up a lot for me where I was like, oh yeah, I guess they tried really hard all the time, and I can't. Like, it's just so hard not to see them doing it and to think like, even like that wasn't funny, but it still took them forever to do, which is maybe even worse. I don't know.
Near the end of the documentary, it feels like they sort of had this junk drawer of ideas where they were like, all right, if we had 2 hours for this documentary, these things would get fleshed out a bit more. Since we have about 10 minutes left, though, we're just going to dump the rest of this stuff here in the last 10 minutes. And so we get some of the behind-the-scenes puppeteers in, like, somewhat harmful situations. They show the Frank Oz wearing the hard hat. They show the puppeteers in raincoats and rain hats when the jug band was singing in the rain. They show a brief moment of the video trickery behind the Rockin' Robin number, which is something that we discussed previously.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was, again, very convincingly done. Good job, guys. There's like 3 or 4 layers of visual effects happening there. And they touch on a few things that I'm just like, I wish we had talked about that a little bit more, because they talk about the fact that they had like the sets being built 5 to 6 weeks before they needed them, which I think establishes that while the episodes were not finalized until the week of when the guest was there to come in and help out with things, a lot of this was started way in advance. And so it wasn't quite the chaotic turnaround times as we may have thought about in the past, because I think we were picturing it a little bit more like Saturday Night Live, where it was like, all right, Monday, start writing, and Saturday we have to make this show.
Yeah. I think it seems like maybe some of the jokes and like the backstage stuff waited for a little bit longer, but they had to have the one thing that really impressed me was the musicians. Seeing them do their thing was really cool. But you have to nail down that and the dance, and then they showed that lady dancing with the choreographer.
Oh, Raquel Welch and Graham Fletcher?
Yeah, Raquel Welch. That part was really cool too.
Yeah,
That
there's
was
a brief
fun to
moment
see.
where they show Raquel Welch like walking through this scene with a cigarette. And it just like seems like they were like, all right, we need to film something with Raquel Welch, but she doesn't really want to be in this documentary. So we just have this one shot of her walking through in the background with a cigarette. I guess we'll use that. But yeah, it's another thing where they focus on Graham Fletcher as being, I think Jim says something like, we've worked with him a few times on the show. And they show his spider number when he's giant spider dancing with Raquel Welch. And it feels a bit randomly placed in this special.
Yeah.
But I also appreciate that they shared it with us, because I feel like they could have very easily skipped over Graham Fletcher in this.
There's a part in the book where they talk about some of the explosions that they do. The smoke that will come up is a prop guy taking a big drag of a cigarette and blowing the smoke up.
Well, I also feel like we saw once, I think like way back in the Mike Douglas show days, there was something where they just had like a plate that looked like it was full of like powdered sugar or something, and they just like blew into it really hard.
Yeah.
And it was like, they have all these
Right.
different ways for just like,
That was like Muppets on Puppets or something like that, or Muppets. on
yeah, maybe
Puppets
that's what
or
it
one of those, I'm
was.
pretty
Yeah,
sure.
where they showed the scene happen from the front and they pulled around to the back to show how they the absolute chaos behind the scenes. I think that was Don Saleen who was like setting off those fake explosions and all that stuff.
Right.
And then the the documentary wraps up with Ethel Merman singing "No Business Like Show Business," and it's just a cute little montage of various celebrity guests and all these things on the Muppet Show. I do think I wish they had cut back a little bit on the montagey clips of the Muppet Show and shared a little bit more information, because there are times where the montages or clips make sense, where Frank will be talking about Miss Piggy's rise to fame and they'll show a few Miss Piggy clips. But in other times, it's just like, here's a clip of Mark Hamill on the Muppet Show. And you're like,
yeah, that was weird.
why?
I was like, oh, you're going to start talking about something related to this? Nah.
nope, we just want to show that Mark Hamill was on our show.
Yeah, maybe behind the scenes, little Raji Dinkies did a bad job. Roger, we can't use any of this. You don't have any future in this line of work.
You'll never make it. Oh boy, I was just looking up of Muppets and Men, the book, to see, if I could point people to where they might be able to find a copy for an affordable price. Right now, I see the cheapest one is on Etsy for $85.
That's more reasonable than I was expecting. It's a big book.
Yeah, I think I found it for about $70, which is kind of a steal for that book. But the other ones I'm seeing are like $120, $160, $190. Somebody, for some reason, has it on ABE Books for $800.
Well, you never know until you try.
Oh, this one is signed, inscribed, and dated by Jim Henson, David Laser, and Kermit the Frog.
Okay, well, there you go.
How'd you get all three of them in the same room?
I think the book, that's a lot, but the book was very well worth reading. I thought it really enriched if I had just watched a documentary, I think it would have been like, whatever. But the book really fleshes out a lot of stuff and actually seems like a pretty realistic look at what they're doing. It's not really glossy or perfect or anything. It just is how the show was put together.
Yeah, no, I think I'm definitely going to reread it when I get my copy back from you, because I read it pretty early on when we started this podcast, and we hadn't even started talking about the Muppet Show yet. So the context for a lot of the stuff in the book wasn't really there yet. So I want to reread it now that I've seen all the episodes to understand a little bit more.
Yeah, I almost feel like this is worth reading right before. If you're doing a watch through of the Muppet Show, it's worth maybe watching the first season, then reading the book and watching the documentary, and then going forward and being like, okay, now I understand how they're putting all of this together and can think critically about what they have to do.
But yeah, if we can have anything, we've got many campaigns with this podcast of things we'd like to bring to, Disney Plus, or things we'd like to bring back, or new shows we'd like to start. But I do think one of them, it would be great if this got a reprint.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's one of those things that would be very much appreciated in the world of Muppet fans.
Yeah.
And I don't know, who has the rights to do that, but
especially younger ones who I don't know. They don't know. They don't know how this stuff works. Well,
Yeah.
I guess a lot of them do, but just to see the guys, the real people behind it, does reframe it.
And I'm okay with my book losing a lot of value if it becomes available as a reprint edition, because, that's not why I bought that book. I bought that book for the information held within, and I would like more people to have access to that information.
Information wants to be free, guys.
Yeah.
Come on.
But at least I can say, if you can't get your hands on a copy of this book, I'd say at least give the documentary a watch, because it does give you a lot of insight into the behind the scenes of how this weird, wacky show we've been discussing for the last however freaking long we've been talking about the Muppet Show.
I don't want to go back and look.
Oh, I could tell you pretty easily. We started talking about the Muppet Show Season 1 back in August of 2021.
Jesus Christ.
So over a year ago, we started talking about the Muppet Show season 1.
That's longer than I thought.
But we are done now, Sam. We are moving on from the Muppet Show. And we're moving on from discussing Muppets and Men because it's time to talk about our Muppets of the Week. This week's Muppets of the Week, like a lot of our recent Muppets of the Week, are big staples of the Muppet Show, but don't have a lot of information about them, so it's going to be a brief one. Because this week's Muppets of the Week are the Mutations. Those tall, fuzzy, purple guys with orange hair that we see at the start of every single episode of the Muppet Show, almost. But who knows anything about these mutations? Who really knows the mutations, Sam?
You maybe more than a lot of people on planet Earth.
Well, unfortunately, there is not much to learn about the mutations, so if I know anything about them, it's pretty much what's out there just on the internet or in these episodes already. It probably feels like the mutations have been around forever because they do show up in the second ever episode of The Muppet Show, the Connie Stevens episode. In that sketch, they are performing Teenager in Love. They are her backup singers in that sketch. And that's, I believe, the one and only time that we're sort of, we get voices coming out of the mutations. Their mouths don't move as these sort of full body puppet characters, and so they don't speak. We don't see them talking, but we do have them back up singing with Connie Stevens. They only appeared a couple other times in season 1 of the Muppet Show, but starting in season 2 of the Muppet Show, 2 of the 3 mutations would start showing up every week in the opening theme song, Dancing Under the Arches, next to Thog and Timmy Monster and Sweetums.
Maybe some of the scariest Muppets, in my opinion.
Oh, you think so?
I don't like them.
Why's that?
They just look like they would strangle you.
I put in my notes, if ever any Muppets existed that didn't hang out with the other ones after the show,
Yeah,
I
they
feel
don't
like
want these guys around.
I feel like the 3 mutations are just 3 hired dudes
Yeah,
who showed up a few times throughout the series of the Muppet Show, did their thing, and then bail. Like, they had their own lives, they have their own careers, they have families.
oh, okay. I have the opposite opinion where the Muppets are just like, all right, I guess we'll see you guys later. Not that they want to leave. The Muppets want them to go.
Oh, see, I feel like these are guys that they just hired, that like they needed some dancers. They hired these guys and they keep bringing them back because they can't really find better ones, but they don't like, there's not really a friendship.
Even in the world of the Muppet Show, these are just 3 guys in suits. Like they're
Oh,
just in
God.
costumes.
You mock us. You wear our skin upon your flesh.
Yeah.
Oh, they feel a little bit, they're in this family of full body Muppets that exists that, I don't know, the way we've talked about full body Muppets in the past, I don't feel like they are our favorite Muppets.
I hate full body Muppets.
Wow, strong stance.
I like Sweetums, but a lot of them are some of my least favorite guys. Thog, Mean Mama.
The birds.
I maybe hate the mutations a little bit less than some of them because at least they don't have baby voices.
But I do think there are some fun full body Muppets that we have enjoyed. Like, obviously, we got Big Bird, we got Bruno the Trash Man.
Oh yeah, they're both great.
We got the
That's
LaTroy Dragon.
He's one of the best Muppets.
One of them,
Mr. Snuffleupagus.
Yeah, I mean, we've got some of the earliest and I think best Muppets are full bodies. I
think Sweetums is one of the best Muppets too.
Yeah, I wonder what it is that just makes us disconnect with some of these other full body characters so much.
I feel like I saw Thog be creepy too many times.
Yeah, because I'm wondering. The mutations sort of feel like a spin-off of Splurge a little bit. They feel like a human version of Splurge, which is a sentence that makes no sense to anyone.
Like Splurge budded, and these came out of him, and then he melted into a puddle.
But as I look through the list of full-body Muppets on Muppet Wiki, I'm seeing there's a good handful that I do enjoy. You know, we've got Bear from Bear in the Big Blue House.
Oh, of course.
We've got Barkley the dog.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, there are a number of ones, too, that we're just kind of like, yeah, I don't need to see them ever again. But the mutations, to me, they have that same vibe to them that the Trolls have, where they look a little bit too much like walk-around Disney parks
Disney
versions
characters.
of the Muppets.
Right.
The Trolls more so, I think they really do look like Dr. Teeth blown up.
Uh-huh.
But it feels weird to me that like the mutations' mouths can't move and they can't articulate and that they're not puppets, I guess. They're so they're a little bit more not unnerving, but just like not as pleasant as some of our other full body characters. Because I think Sweetums, you get his eyes moving, his mouth moving, he's got more life to him.
Yeah.
The mutations,
and they have human proportions when the rest of the characters don't have human proportions.
Yeah, they look like undeniably like a guy in a suit.
Right.
They maybe like maybe not even splurge. They feel like maybe an evolution of the creepy Muppet Band in, was it Hey Cinderella or the Frog Prince? One of those two. I think it was Hey Cinderella because it's at the dance. But they had the creepy Muppet Men band where
I forgot about that.
It's like the fleshy version of the mutations. And they were like, well, that's too creepy. Let's add fur.
We got to get a little fuzz on these guys.
Yeah, but like they're basically just man Muppets. That being said, I think they're interesting, and I do think it's interesting that they brought them back for the 2011 movie as a part of the putting on the theme song thing again, because they had not been around for like over 30 years. They'll show up in the Great Muppet Caper, but that's the last time we'll see them until 2011.
Yeah, but their absence there would be noticeable if they hadn't have been there.
Right. Because it's super weird that they don't have Timmy Monster in the 2011 Muppets movie. They just have an empty archway.
They didn't even try. What, did Timmy Monster die? And they're just like, that's like in memory of Timmy Monster. We'll never fill this arch.
But yeah, that's about all there is to say about the mutations. We will see them again next time when we talk about the Great Muppet Caper. But I think very briefly. And then we won't have to think about them again for 30 years. But what would you rate the mutations out of 10, Sam?
Oh, this is tough. Just that their walk in the intro, that's such an important part of the intro. 5.5 stars, I think. They have to be there, but I don't want them to be there. But they've earned the right to be there.
I gave them 5 because I think it's just, I think similar to what you just said. I think they have to be there. They feel like a big part of the show, even though they don't really add a whole lot. And as a concept of like the mutations, I could see if they kept hiring them as like this singing group, I could see that being more interesting. But because they usually just use them as like a random monster inserted in this sketch, they don't quite live up to their potential.
Sure, that makes sense.
All right, Sam, well, before we go, I gotta ask, did you have time to enjoy any non-Muppet things this week?
I watched Near Dark, which is well, first of all, if anybody out there has the Criterion collection, they have a lot of great Halloween October collections right now, and one of them is 80s horror, and one of these 80s horror movies is Near Dark, which is a vampire movie directed by Catherine Bigelow. I think it was the movie she made right after Point Break. And it's about kind of like a small town cowboy kid who gets bitten by a vampire and has to figure out how to be a vampire with this like roving band of trashy vampires. And it's mostly pretty bad, but there is one scene where they're in a bar killing people that's like amazing and worth watching the whole movie for. So that was like a good Halloween movie to watch. Otherwise, I've been watching Andor still and She-Hulk still. Oh, I watched Werewolf by Night, which I liked quite a bit.
I have not checked the internet because I'm smarter than that. I loved this week's episode of She-Hulk.
Oh, I did too. I think She-Hulk has been very good all throughout, but I really liked this one.
This week's episode with, spoiler alert, Matt Murdock. Top notch.
Yeah, it was just the right, like, It was a perfect Marvel storyline where two heroes meet and they fight each other, and then they're like, "Hey, wait a minute,
We can have
the real
sex.
bad guys
What?
over there, and we can have sex." Yeah, yeah. I thought it was a very fun episode and worth all the build up and worth like the episodes where she's like, "Haha, he's not in this one," which I really like that show a lot. I feel like I got to hand it to Disney that I didn't like the earlier Disney Plus shows, but I think this batch of them right now is pretty dang good. Between Andor and She-Hulk and Werewolf by Night.
Yeah, I'm kind of bummed that I believe the next episode of She-Hulk is the last episode.
I think it is.
Which,
yeah.
Doesn't feel abrupt in a way that, story-wise, but feels abrupt in the way of no, I want to watch more of this, please.
Yeah. There needs to be a few months of this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think she'll be around for a long time. So we'll
Fingers
probably
crossed.
see a lot of her in a lot of movies and stuff. Because she seems like a pretty natural fit to fill in some of the gaps that a lot of the characters who have left the Marvel movies were filling in. But yeah. How about you?
There's so much new TV, or at least new seasons of TV that have started soon that I've talked about already on this podcast, but keeping up with them is too much.
Yeah.
I'm still watching Welcome to Wrexham, Central Park, The Connors, Bob's Burgers, She-Hulk.
The Connors is still on?
Yeah, it is.
Wow.
Taskmaster, Abbott Elementary, Bake Off, Andor, Kim's Convenience.
That's so much TV.
Yeah, Kim's Convenience again, not new. I just had never seen it before. But yeah, I'm not even caught up on Andor yet because I waited too long to start, and now I'm still falling behind.
I love that show.
I've watched the first 3 episodes, so I like those a lot. That is a show that I'm very happy with because it never overstays its welcome, at least in the first 3 episodes, where it feels like they could go another 10 minutes or so on an episode and overstay their welcome or try to tease something. But instead they're just no, I think this one's done.
Oh, the last 2, I've been oh, you're going to end now. How dare you?
But then we also watched The Royal Tenenbaums last night because we're still doing our Wes Anderson fall movie watching thing. And my wife and I are planning on being some Wes Anderson characters for Halloween. So
Cool.
also some research being done.
Who are you going to be?
I'm going to be Max Fisher from Rushmore.
Oh, right. Who is she going to be?
Margot Tenenbaum.
Great.
So before we go, we want to let you know what we'll be watching next time. And when we mean next time, we mean 2 weeks from now because we are taking next week off. But when we come back, we will be discussing the rest of June 1981 with, the big thing we'll be talking about is The Great Muppet Caper, our second theatrical Muppet movie, The Great Muppet Caper, that you can watch on Disney+. But we'll also be discussing a June 14th, 1981 segment from CBS News showing some behind the scenes of The Great Muppet Caper. They did one of those, reports from the set kind of things.
Morley Safer went over there.
I don't know if it was him, but sure. But you can find that on YouTube under the title CBS News Sunday Morning, The Great Muppet Caper and the Muppet Workshop. Because we also get some nice little insight into the Muppet Workshop. Similar to what we saw in Muppets and Men, but just a little different. And we need to thank our friend Tuna for making the music for this podcast and Cassie Wilson for singing our theme song. Don't forget to go to commitment.com to get your Commitment logo enamel pin, or sign up for our Patreon, or just look at our cute little faces.
And that's important too,
Yeah, maybe you have no idea what we look like, and maybe you want to ruin the illusion of what you're imagining. There are some very professional headshots of us over on commitment.com.
Yeah, maybe we both are talking dogs in your head. And if that's the case, don't look at us.
Don't go to commitment.com.
Yeah. Woof, woof.
Bark, bark. But you can email these 2 dogs at mail@commitment.com if you have any questions or treats. Because we're dogs.
Oh.
Get it?
Did you say treats?
And you can follow the podcast on Twitter if you want to see some terrible Muppet Uncanny Valley monsters that I have been creating. It's at Commitment Pod. And we're also getting into an era where we're getting into some more of the not on Disney Plus things where we'll have to share links again and YouTube playlists. So follow us on Twitter at Commitment Pod if you want to see those links to what we're watching next and where you can watch it along with us. But you can follow me on the internet at Matthew Gatos.
And I'm Sam Schultz.
And as always, keep believing.
Keep pretending.